happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And the winner is Moonlight. Winner.
Are you going to do that every week?
No, just this week. The winner is Moonlight. Anyway, in the news this week.
It's all about Gavin Grimm and trans students this week because the Supreme Court has vacated the lower order, sent the case away. There is a delay. It's not a defeat. It's a delay in whether trans students will be respected in the schools they attend.
We have a lot to say about that, and we have a lot to say about how the Trump Republican machine is replacing Obamacare to hurt the sick, the poor, and the elderly severely, and they're planning on allowing discrimination against women and LGBT people for religious reasons.
We will update you about what's happening pro and con in the states on LGBT legislation.
In two separate incidents in Tulsa, maybe three, the LGBT center was shot up and an 18-year-old man was beaten unconscious in an anti-gay assault.
But a Seattle mosque has said no to anti-trans activists who were seeking support.
A British father who raped his 16-year-old daughter for being lesbian is given a long prison sentence.
And the upcoming Beauty and the Beast film is slipping in a gay character. And now that we've seen all, or one of us has seen all of When We Rise, we'll update you on our opinion on that.
Okay. So
Gavin Grimm, yeah. So we know, I want to review this whole thing so that people understand this. The Obama administration had, from the Education Department and the Justice Department a couple of years ago, issued guidelines to schools across the nation. Here's how you can and should respect your transgender students in how you address them and how you treat them in classrooms, and how you respect their right to use the restroom that corresponds to their lived gender identity.
It's guidance. It's not a law, but school districts were saying, you know, we're getting sued over this. We have a lot of controversy over this. What should we do? And they got some guidance.
And they got guidance. And while it wasn't a law, the administration had said, if you don't follow this guidance and people complain, we might consider taking away your federal funds. So there were some teeth to it. So anyway, along comes, there are several cases around the country of several students challenging their schools for not being properly respectful. But one of them was in Virginia, Gavin Grimm, a high school student who is a young trans man.
We have a picture of Gavin.
Yes, let's look at Gavin as we do this. So Gavin told his high school that he was transitioning. The high school said fine, completely respected that. He was using the male restroom. His fellow students respected it. Everybody was going along just fine. And
but then a grown-up complained.
As they are wont to do. Came along and complained to the school board and talked the school board into passing a rule that prohibited Gavin from using the boys' restroom.
I have a question here, and
yes.
I don't know the answer to this. Now, Gavin has gone on to get a birth certificate saying that he's male.
Yep.
But you know, none of this should depend upon that. But does the Gloucester County policy say your gender at birth, or does it say your birth certificate?
I don't know the answer to that either, but you're right that there are, in some jurisdictions, that birth certificate requirement. In fact, in Texas, they are talking about a birth certificate requirement. It's a phony construct.
Exactly.
It shouldn't have anything to do with anything. But nonetheless, either way, Gavin was thrown out of the boys' restroom in his Gloucester County, Virginia school when the school board passed this law.
And I believe he had to go to a faculty restroom somewhere, a single-serve restroom somewhere. But of course, this was of no use to him if he went to a football game on the weekend and he needed to go to the restroom. There was no place for him to go.
There's a whole new movie about it called Hidden Figures, where the African-American women have to run 40 minutes across the NASA facility to use the restroom they've been assigned to.
This happened in Congress when women started coming in, too.
It'll make it all quite vivid for you. Nonetheless, so Gavin went to court, and the first court turned him down and said, no, the school board has the right to do this, and you do not have rights under Title IX or of the Education Amendments or the Equal Protection Clause. Those don't apply to you. Sex discrimination is strictly defined and does not include transgender. So he appealed.
That judge, initial judge, was particularly bigoted.
Yes, quite vicious. But the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it just takes me back to those days when we were talking about every circuit in the country around marriage
and driving
rules.
you all crazy.
Yes. But the Fourth Circuit is in Virginia.
Which includes North Carolina, and that's significant.
Well, the Fourth Circuit said, look, we're not going to get into whether Title IX includes you or equal protection. We're not going to decide that. What we are going to decide...
Title IX is sex discrimination.
Yes.
And in many cases, transgender people, are winning sex discrimination cases under Title IX.
Title IX is the Education Amendments Act of 1972, and also under the Civil Rights Act, Title VII, I think, and equal protection generally, and things like that. So that's the current debate. Does a law that forbids sex discrimination apply to cases of discrimination against transgender people?
And what we were hoping for out of the Supreme Court was a landmark decision that was finally going to settle that. I know, I'm just saying, but that's what this...
We're only at the Fourth Circuit so far. Well, so the Fourth Circuit said, we're not going to get into all that. We're not going to decide whether any of these laws include transgender discrimination. What we are going to say is we're going to take a previous Supreme Court ruling in the Auer case, A-U-E-R.
Okay.
You spelled it last week. I'm spelling it this week. A-U-E-R, the Auer case, which said that in a case that's a little ambiguous, the court can defer to the federal government's interpretation of a law. So in this case...
We could be in a lot of trouble in the Trump administration if that's true.
A lot. We're not sure we like that decision. But in this case, it worked in our favor because the court said, we will defer to the Obama administration's interpretation of the sex discrimination laws to include discrimination against transgender people. So Gavin Grimm, you win because the Obama administration supports you. So then, of course, the right wing appeals that to the Supreme Court. So we have been waiting to. The court said they were going to hear two issues: whether our decision was proper in this case, and they were going to settle the Title IX thing. Yes. So the Supreme Court said they would take the case. So our oral arguments were scheduled for March 28th, I think.
That's right.
And people were submitting briefs to the court from both sides, hundreds of thousands of whatever.
Now, wait a minute. This is very important because there were scores and scores of civic groups and attorneys general across the country coming in on Gavin's side, which was all very encouraging. It means we're finally reaching some, not consensus on this, but a majority, of
critical
people,
mass,
corporations.
Yes, a lot of corporations who are very involved in the Texas
education
case
groups
too. Yes. So we're all waiting, but meanwhile, boom! The tornado roars into town in the person of the Trump administration.
Jeff Sessions and Betsy DeVos withdraw the guidance.
Over Betsy DeVos's almost dead body, as it turns out.
Well,
not quite dead because she didn't resign over
it.
But she got her arm twisted by Trump and Sessions, who wanted to withdraw the Obama guidance and no longer tell schools that they had to respect trans students. So what this meant was that they then wrote a letter to the Supreme Court, the Justice Department did, and said, guess what? We are no longer supporting these guidelines. They've been withdrawn, so you no longer have the basis for the Fourth Circuit's decision of deference to the administration's interpretation of the law.
And not to make too broad an analogy, but just as in the case of racial discrimination, let's leave it up to the states, as America did for a long, long time.
Yes, that was their excuse for this. But specifically, they said to the Supreme Court, we are taking away our interpretation of the civil rights law as including transgender people.
They did not, however, the Trump administration, issue any guidance on how to handle this. They're just saying,
no,
you decide how to do it.
They're washing their hands of it.
Pontius Pilate.
So then we were
to get into the Easter season.
On pins and needles. Would the Supreme Court go ahead and hear Gavin Grimm's case anyway in relation to just do these laws cover him, or would they say, all right, this is now a mess, the basis of the Fourth Circuit decision no longer exists because they didn't decide the interpretation of the laws, they decided deference to the Obama administration interpretation.
And both sides said they wanted it resolved in this case, although now the other side is happy that it's not being resolved. Now, it's hard to say why this is happening.
Well, wait a minute. What happened? The Supreme Court said, we're not going to hear the case now.
We're kicking it back to the Fourth Circuit.
We're vacating the Fourth Circuit decision because the deference to the Obama administration no longer exists. So we can't let that stand because that's been wiped out. So we're kicking it back to the court, vacating their decision. The Fourth Circuit has to hear this again on the original arguments of does this include, do non-discrimination laws for sex discrimination include transgender people? And the fact is the Fourth Circuit can kick it down to the district court. This may go all the way back to the district court.
The bad judge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, who could be overturned again. So,
it's justice delayed, justice denied for Gavin Grimm.
And for a lot of other students around the country and people who are waiting to get a Supreme Court decision that says sex discrimination laws apply in cases of discrimination against transgender people.
But Gavin told the Washington Post, this doesn't signify a loss. We are just going to keep moving forward as vehemently as we have been so far. He's a tremendously poised and articulate young man.
He has matured several years as this case has gone along. But we showed, I remember months ago, and you can find this on YouTube if you just search Gavin Grimm on YouTube, when he first stood up at a school board hearing very, very tentatively to speak and said, you know, I didn't come here to speak. I didn't expect to speak. But I hear what's being said, and I have to get up and say something. And he's very hesitant and a little slow in saying what he's saying. But he's, you know, he's defending himself very articulately. But now, man, he is a superstar now.
This week he was, was asked, about some of the questions in the case, and he said, "Well, I would leave it to my attorneys to elucidate that."
But this is an important case. So, is the Trump administration stalling so they can get Neil Gorsuch on the court? Here's the real thing: Anthony Kennedy is back to being the swing vote. He has been just a diehard supporter in every LGBT rights case that
gay rights cases.
Well, I'll call yes, although
they were not involving transgender. I mean, of course, they affect transgender people.
Yes, they do. So that's why
they were sexual orientation cases.
But he certainly has not said anything that we know of or decided any direct cases on transgender rights or non-discrimination. So he is now a big mystery because...
And he's waiting for his buddy Neil Gorsuch to come in.
Yes, who is his mentee. And will Neil Gorsuch... I cannot imagine that Neil Gorsuch would sway his opinion, but what do I know? And certainly, God help us if one of the other liberals
We're
disappears.
speculating on all this, but it is heartbreaking for the students out there who have become the center of such a political storm. Again, especially when most of their peers are fine with this stuff and there's no problem.
Well, and they are getting support place by place. A lot of states, as you pointed out, still have non-discrimination laws that do apply to gender identity.
And it's certainly getting the issue discussed. I watched that thing on Vice the other day about these transgender young kids who are getting, delay of puberty and all and hormone treatments and all this kind of stuff at a very young age, and it's all being handled very sensitively. So I'm encouraged.
I agree. The publicity around this, I think, is having a major effect.
When we fought for condoms in the schools, we never thought it would happen, but we thought getting it on the front page would get everybody talking about condoms and AIDS, and it did. But for those of you worried about where to go to the bathroom, Yelp, the crowd, what Yelp is, the crowd-sourced website, is offering reviews of everything from restaurants to stores to churches and telling you where there are gender-neutral bathrooms across the country. They're making this a category. And it's very, very important because it can be hard to find a place to go sometimes.
And there is this case or law being pushed in Texas. That's where a lot of the spotlight is now, SB 6. And they held a big legislative hearing on that this week, and hundreds showed up to protest at this hearing on the legislation. And yes, corporations are weighing in big time there, and lots of others.
Yep.
And they are being defensive about it and saying, well, if you have a birth certificate change, then you can do that. Penn State has reaffirmed its pro-transgender student policies.
What happened in Chicago? They had a rally. We have a picture of it.
Yes, they had more than 1,000 people at a trans march for liberation there in Chicago at the Trump building. You see the Trump sign there, yeah.
And we had 1,500 in New York the week before.
Yeah, and it was specifically at the Trump building to protest him. In Washington, very heartwarming story from Seattle.
Yes.
A mosque was approached by right-wing anti-trans activists who thought, well, here are our natural allies, the Muslims.
And they had failed, this right-wing group had failed to get enough signatures to get an anti-trans thing on the ballot. Last year, they're trying to do it again, and they were sending their people out to mosques, and the people at the mosque said, we don't want any trouble. We have enough trouble.
Well, we understand discrimination and people being mean to people, and we don't want any part of that.
That's great.
And that was terrific. Let's see. Do I have anything else here? No, I think that's...
actually, in several Chicago area churches on Ash Wednesday had glitter Ash Wednesday and mixed glitter in with the ashes.
I'm not crazy about that.
Oh, well.
I'm not religious, but I'm offended by the idea that it's supposed to be about humility, right?
Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return, is what they say when they put the mark on you.
I rely on Andy for those quotes. But doesn't glitter kind of work against that?
It's just another outward symbol, well, we could get into it. Let's not.
Let's don't.
All right. Are we going to talk about Trump care?
Sure.
All right.
By the way, here's another footnote. We're just getting word here on Wednesday afternoon that Education Secretary Betsy DeVos met with a lot of families, students, groups, GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, the National Center for Transgender Equality, Equality Michigan, a big crowd to discuss these issues. We have not heard yet what she said.
Yeah, what came out of it.
Yeah. Who else did I hear had Al Sharpton this morning was talking about how he and a group of people went to meet with Jeff Sessions and complain about
and what happened to
that? He listened.
Mark Morial was one of them, the head of the Urban League, I think.
Yes. So the Trump administration people are holding meetings, listening, and then going out and doing horrible things.
Nothing good is coming out of this administration, and I guess aside from maybe nuclear war and financial collapse, which are pending, and I mean, I don't say that apocalyptically. I think it's possible with this crew. This health stuff that you've seen so much about, and I don't think is being focused on properly, and I don't think reporters are asking the right questions. I mean,
imagine that.
Well, I mean, it is horrifying to sit them to treat a guy like Tom Price, the head of Health and Human Services, respectfully as he goes on about, everything is going to be patient and doctor-centered now. No, insurance companies is all the only ones you're rewarding, and you're going to kill people off and thin the herd. Look, this plan that's on the table now is worse for older people. I mean, someone like, I'm 63, someone like me, a $4,000 tax credit to go buy health insurance. Yeah, that'll take care of a couple of months. Of course, this horrible going after Planned Parenthood.
Unbelievable. Trying to make a deal with Planned Parenthood, you stop offering abortion services and we won't cut off your funding.
Yeah. And if you've
who do you think you are and who do you think they are?
And if you've got a pre-existing condition, if you maintain your insurance, if you can afford it, you can keep it. But if it lapses, there's this 30% increase in this. And
that's called not covering pre-existing conditions.
Look, if you thought...
And they're screwing Medicaid.
Well, they want to turn Medicaid into a block grant program, and if the states want to make it up, they can, and if they don't...
And cap it. No more patients on Medicaid.
And if you don't think that Medicaid affects you because you're not poor at the moment, try getting old and going into a nursing home, because no matter what kind of a job you had, you're eventually going to spend down and you're going to require Medicaid to stay in that nursing home. And this goes for your parents or yourself or anybody that you care about. Ding, 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 raise the alarm, stop this. Now, it's encouraging to see that they're divided about it and maybe it's not going to go through, but the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tom Price, is already sitting there in his office with powers given to him by the Congress under the Obama administration, and he's starting to charge people more for things on Medicare. These are old people over 65 that they never had to pay for. It's an absolute assault on the healthcare system that is just going to return us to the days essentially pre-Medicare.
They are brazen, they are shameless, they're going to cut funding to the Coast Guard to help build their wall against Mexico.
And my friend Ann Northrup would call a question like this naive, but if I was at the press conference, I would say, well, wait a minute. I mean, if you really want to save money and you really want to get everybody covered, have you looked at what the rest of the world does? And I realize that, Republicans always say, you can't get it. Everybody's coming here from Canada and Britain, But they would never give up their systems for what we have.
Well, I would call you naive because there is such a heinous propaganda program in this country against so-called socialized medicine. And government-run medicine.
And I'm talking about socialized insurance, and just for insurance, not for. I mean, in Britain, the NHS hires a lot of doctors, and they run the National Health Service. Although that's on the under the Conservative government being hit at. Mm-hmm. So. All insurance essentially is socialized. I'm talking about eliminating private insurance companies, and I mean,
we can dream.
You like your Medicare, don't you? I'm not saying it's perfect, but you don't want to give it up.
No, although I would like to take that out of the hands of private insurance companies, which I pay private insurance companies for some of that coverage.
And since last we met, President Trump has accused President Obama of McCarthyism. And I thought this was particularly relevant to our show, since Joe McCarthy's right-hand man was a gay man named Roy Cohn, who was the worst person in the world before Trump came along, and was Trump's lawyer.
And mentor.
And he's using the term McCarthyism. Yeah. I mean, that whole thing, Trump should be arrested for that.
He might be.
And then there's the new travel ban.
I was just going to get to that.
Go ahead.
Well, it is, it's horrible on its face. Keep all refugees out. Forget people applying for asylum who are being abused in their home countries. And this will particularly hurt LGBTQ and HIV positive people around the world because they are being hideously abused and they need to come here.
And lest we forget, that piece of crap president we have now stood there at the Republican convention and said, No, I'm going to protect the LGBTQ community from ISIS, who are beheading them hideously, this kind of stuff. Well, then they need to then if you're going to save them, they need to become refugees and they need to be able to come here. And you're saying they can't. Everything he says is a lie.
Everything.
Everything.
The State Department did issue its annual human rights report. Usually that is presented by the Secretary of State at a public announcement press conference. No Rex Tillerson with this one.
Haven't had any press conferences.
Well, they tried it.
He's traveling abroad and he's not taking the press corps with him. The Secretary of State of the United States.
He was in the United States yesterday at
he stands there like this. He stands there like this while Andrea Mitchell is shouting questions at him, looking around.
Yeah.
Hey, grow up.
Exactly. That's the thing. There, someone referred to them, maybe Joe Scarborough this week said, it's like third graders, and they are. And that's being mean to third graders.
Joe Scarborough, who went to the presidential address and is up there going like this for his president.
Well, he flip-flops every week. This week he's against him. I know. I'm not defending that. They did appoint, finally, the out-gay Rick Grinnell, who we thought might be the UN ambassador, he's now the NATO ambassador. He's been a Fox commentator for the last few years. He was a press guy for the U.S. at the UN. And he went to work for the Romney campaign, but got thrown out of it very quickly because social conservatives, as they say, were so against him working for Romney. So are they going to go after him now that he's working for Trump, or are they so delighted with everything that's happening that they no longer need to go after him? He's a big Trump supporter, by the way, so.
I need something to purify myself.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to, my friend Norman Siegel has written a Declaration of Independence for our times, and they're going to have a reading of it with commentary on March 20th at the Ethical Culture Society up there on 64th and Central Park West on Monday, March 20th at 7 o'clock. It's open to the public. I'm going to be there. I've signed the thing already. It's, and it'll be a great group of a large group of people that I hope coalesce into a movement.
Is it going to be a meeting as well?
Well, yes, we're going to talk. Everybody's going to talk. I mean, there's room for people to make commentary and things and organize. Yes.
Okay. Well, would it cheer you up if I told you that California did a poll of its voting population and found that 12% of them identified as LGBT?
Yeah, that's the electorate that they're talking about.
Yeah, the people who actually go vote.
I think it's like 16% of young people.
Of those 18 to 29.
And 10%
we could take over eventually.
Us. That's the electorate. That's not the population.
Yeah. All right. In Florida, we told you last week that Soul Force was going to the National Religious Broadcasters Convention to protest the fact that they were meeting in Orlando. Well, here are a couple of Soul Force people with a police officer because they're getting arrested because they brought in this cross with little doves attached to it.
What happened to religious freedom?
That was evidently too much.
Are you allowed to wear a little cross around your neck?
But thank you to Soul Force for showing up at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention.
Okay. By the way, we're going to talk a lot about state legislation, and it's of concern to all of us, no matter where it's happening. But if you go to this website for monitoring all this, equalityfederation.org/LAC for legislative action. And check that out, find out what's happening in your state, and do something about it. I mean, the transgender groups are asking us to go to our governors and get better guidance in our states.
By the way, I'm wearing a little red for International Women's Day because that's the day we're taping.
Yes, and there are now over 100 anti-LGBTQ state bills
All right, let's go through some of this. Alabama is trying to pass a bill to kill marriage licenses for everyone, although what you're supposed to do is register your marriage with a probate judge. This is still the Kim Davis question of trying to allow clerks not to have to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. But in the end, you're still acknowledging ultimately same-sex marriages, so I don't know what you think you're getting out of that.
In South Dakota, the House has passed the Senate bill and sending it to the governor that would allow taxpayer-funded child placement agencies to deny services, including adoption and foster care, to qualified gay, lesbian, bisexual parents and transgender individuals if they have moral or religious convictions about it.
In Kentucky, the legislature has passed a bill to broaden religious freedom rights for student groups. This is so campus groups in colleges and high schools can discriminate on the basis of their religious beliefs so that they can keep, for instance, LGBT kids out of campus clubs or...
The law currently is that you have to, it's called all comers. You have to let all comers go to a group if it's getting government
state funding, yes. And this law would allow the groups to keep getting state funding even if they discriminate. The governor has not signed it yet, but the governor, Matt Bevin, is a Republican, and I have a hard time thinking.
Never know.
Yeah.
Kim Davis is back in the news. The ACLU is not going to be able to recoup its legal fees in its lawsuit against her.
It was something about they didn't actually win the lawsuit.
Well, it's a preliminary ruling, and they're going to file for an appeal.
In Wyoming, the Supreme Court there has decided to censure a municipal judge in Pinedale, a small town. She's not a lawyer, it turns out. You don't have to be a lawyer to be a municipal judge there. She announced that she would not marry same-sex couples. Most of her duties are performing marriages. She's never been asked to perform a same-sex wedding, but she says she's against it. So the Supreme Court had been asked to fire her. They said, well, what we're going to do is censure her and tell her that she either performs all weddings or none, and we'll keep an eye on her.
Well, I like what they wrote, though, which it said, this isn't about a religious test on judges. It's about maintaining the public's faith in an independent and impartial judiciary that conducts its functions according to the rule of law. Independent, you can't choose a popular or an unpopular law.
It's a civil position, and what all these right-wingers are trying to do is slowly inculcate religious views into the laws of the country. You know, Jeff Sessions is a big proponent of this, and he has said repeatedly, openly, that what he wants is Christian law.
What about Sharia law?
Christian law as opposed to civil law. This is the man who is now the Attorney General of the United States.
Well,
he wants Christian law.
I think he should recuse himself.
From everything. From the job, please.
How? Well.
In good news from Utah, where the legislature has repealed a bad law they passed, last year or something, no promo homo law that told the schools they couldn't mention homosexuality, and now they've repealed that law, which is great. They were facing a lawsuit over this, which encouraged them to do that.
The Texas case where they're suing, these people suing so that we don't get marital benefits from the state, that was heard before their high court.
Oh, and that's one where they're, I think they're bringing the birth certificate issue into it too. If you are a trans person married to someone of the opposite sex, and you have changed your birth certificate, they're more willing to acknowledge it than if you haven't. The ACLU has filed Freedom of Information requests on the rumored Federal Religious Freedom Restoration Act. You may remember we were hearing a lot about that a few weeks ago, and then it sort of went quiet, and we're thinking that it may come up again because we can't believe they're really going to drop that, given their attitudes. But no one has heard anything about it lately, so the ACLU is trying to dig out the information on what they're doing on that and how they're putting it together and why and all of that.
And the one of those Baker cases in Oregon has gone before the Oregon Court of Appeals.
In Illinois, a court there has affirmed what we already knew and what we certainly we don't like, but we support, which is that pastors have a right to offer conversion therapy to minors, as opposed to medical personnel who are licensed by the state. Who don't. But when the legislature passed their ban on conversion therapy for minors, evidently they did not write an explicit exemption for pastors, so pastors went to court.
I'm hearing that there's going to be a federal effort to allow it, and that's something that's being pushed for by the right wing. That you can't ban it.
In Colorado, the House there has passed a no conversion therapy for minors law. It still has to go to the Senate and the governor, but I would suspect that would pass in Colorado. Let's talk about the St. Patrick's Day parades.
Well, in Boston, we've been able to march for the last 2 years with a gay veterans group. The St. Patrick's Day parade there is very centered on veterans.
It's run by the South
Allied,
Boston
Allied veterans or whatever.
Yeah.
So the city threatened to take its money out, and so they caved and they let us march for 2 years, and now they're saying no. Now, you think this is due to the Trump effect.
Well, I think they are emboldened by the bigotry of the Trump administration, and so they have decided we're not going to let that happen anymore.
So the mayor's pulling out, the governor, who's Republican, Charlie Baker, is pulling out. By the way, he's going to fund Planned Parenthood if they pull funding for Planned Parenthood.
Well, he's in Massachusetts.
Senator Markey is pulling out, U.S. Senator.
The Grand Marshal of the parade is pulling out. So I suspect, maybe even by the time you see this, that there will be a negotiated settlement that will put out vets back in the parade.
Nope.
But I could be wrong.
Now, we fought for 25 years to get into the New York parade, and we did last year with a gay group, Lavender and Green, and I was wondering if we were going to be able to march again. Well, I just heard word that we are. We're meeting at 48th Street and 5th Avenue with Lavender and Green at 3:20, but you're supposed to register beforehand, although I think if you show up, you can just, but if you...
By 3:20, no one cares.
If you
the parade starts at about 11 a.m.
If you get on our email list, I'll include the registration information for those of you who want to join.
In Boston, when Out Vets was first let in, all the big politicians and federal officials marched with the group. But by the second year, they had disappeared, and the group was put at the end of the parade.
Even when we marched last year, there were very few people on the sidelines by that point.
That is my point. And in New York, we're still at the end of the parade.
That's fine.
Whatever. All right.
Some violent stuff?
Yes.
Well, horrible attack in, you talk about the Trump effect in Key West, where an anti-gay attacker told the couple that he beat up, "You live in Trump country now." He was arrested and extradited. And, he went up to these guys. "You guys are a couple of fags. I bet you faggots voted for that bitch Hillary." This is the kind of stuff that people are saying on the street now, all over the place. It's not just here.
Yeah, well, they've said versions of it for years, but it does feel like they're a little more emboldened.
They think they're entitled now to say it. It's now I can say it.
Well, and that's why I think the Boston Parade Committee is kicking out the out group. In Brooklyn, 2 men were gay bashed and slashed with a knife at a fried chicken place in Brooklyn.
In Tulsa, the Oklahoma LGBT Equality Center was shot up with a pellet gun at like 12:20 a.m. And then
13 pellets were found on the ground around there.
And then this guy goes into the center, the next day?
Yep.
And starts spewing abusive language and says, "I wish you all would die." It's like, maybe he had something to do with the other thing. We don't know. And then there's the other Tulsa incident.
Cody Rogers, 18 years old, goes to a going-away party for some girl. And some of the girls at the party invited their boyfriends, and the boyfriends came and saw some gay men there and said, "Oh, we're going to beat you up." And Cody Rogers was beaten unconscious at this party and ended up in the hospital.
He now wants to work on hate crimes laws in Oklahoma. And
then in Asbury Park, New Jersey, someone showed up at the, what's the name of the equality group in New Jersey,
Garden State Equality.
Yes, thank you. And threw rocks through the front door, shattered the front door, with someone inside working there.
And I want to say, you know, our governor, and these anti-Jewish attacks on the cemeteries and on Jewish centers are horrible. Our Governor Cuomo wanted to show support by going to Israel to meet with Netanyahu, for God's sakes. I wish he had gone upstate to where some of these things happened and confronted the communities. They don't like to acknowledge that it's right here. The bigotry is right here.
All right. Well, speaking of foreign trips, let's do international news. Good news from Finland, where they passed same-sex marriage equality some time ago, but it has just gone into effect and includes adoption rights, which is nice and progressive.
In Ireland, the front runner to be the next prime minister is openly gay. Leo Varadkar. He's the what is he? The
social justice minister
from Fine
for his
Gael,
party.
His party.
And in Northern Ireland, there's a power shift in the legislature there, and it makes the legalization of same-sex marriage more likely there in the near future.
Because the Unionist Party has lost enough votes to can't veto things the way it was vetoing things.
And in Australia, the prime minister is in trouble again. You know, he claims to support same-sex marriage, but can't approve it for his party to pass it, and so it's all a mess. Well, he had to skip the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras celebrations because he is so anathema in the community.
And in Germany, they have a similar situation where the prime minister supports same-sex marriage, but is in coalition with parties that don't. But the Social Democrats who are in that coalition want to put it on the table at their meeting of the coalition and try to get it. 80% of Germans support same-sex marriage, but they can't have it because of the Christian Democrats. And that's a party, Christian Democrats.
In Brazil, a local mayor has married his boyfriend. There they are. The mayor is on the left. Yes. The crying boyfriend is on the right, now
It's
husband.
the first time in Brazil that a mayor has starred in his own same-sex marriage, he said. Starred.
All right.
It's been legal there since 2013.
In Spain, there is a controversy because a right-wing Catholic group started running a bus through Madrid that was covered with anti-trans slogans. We have a picture of that bus. Charming anti-trans slogans in Spanish there. But the city of Madrid has banned the bus as inappropriate, and I think other cities around Spain are doing the same. But they'll try anything, won't they?
There was a horrible story from the United Kingdom where a father, who was not named because they don't want to expose his daughter, but his daughter was 16, she came out, and he raped her to show her what for over being a lesbian. He was sentenced to 20, and he also abused one of the other daughters, sentenced to 21 years in prison.
So the lesbian thing may just have been an excuse for his ongoing sexual abuse of his daughters.
Horrendous, horrendous.
Also a horrendous story out of Saudi Arabia. 35 trans women were there in Riyadh on religious pilgrimage from Pakistan. They're from Pakistan. They went to Saudi Arabia for the religious pilgrimage. They were arrested by Saudi police. 2 of them were beaten to death. They were put into bags and beaten with sticks until they were dead. 11 were released from custody after making some kind of payment to the cops. And 22 are still being held as we speak.
Of course, we all remember George Michael dying on Christmas Day. Well, the coroner now says he died of natural causes. It wasn't a drug overdose or anything like that.
Heart problems and liver. Well, it's good to get it cleared up, and because there was a lot of rumors about that. In Tokyo, the 2020 Olympics, under the new Olympic non-discrimination rules, after we made such a stink about Russia and Sochi, are going to offer gender-neutral bathrooms. They're working very hard on that.
And they have a lot of those in Japan as it is.
And the Olympics are a pretty corrupt operation, but they will have gender-neutral bathrooms. And French Vogue has a trans model on the cover of its March issue.
There she is.
Valentina Sampaio, 20 years old, a very popular and successful model. Let's show the other picture of her in real life. Very, very cute.
Yes.
She's also the brand ambassador for L'Oreal hair products, and the whole issue is about trans life and trans beauty. So congratulations to French Vogue. All right, moving on.
Sure.
AIDS news.
How'd you like Feud?
AIDS news.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess we've covered the Ryan healthcare proposal. The Trump budget coming out next week is expected to cut foreign aid, including HIV spending, by a third.
Oh,
a third.
Even, couldn't stand George Bush, and I didn't like the way he spent all the AIDS money, but he increased funding for PEPFAR massively.
Yes. So that he didn't have to give it to a more global fund, but that's another story.
I'm not praising him, I'm just saying.
And if you're in Florida, in Wilton Manors, a very gay town, the World AIDS Museum there is going to have an exhibit up for 8 weeks called AIDS Crisis in America, 30 Years of ACT UP. Everything from Keith Haring paintings to ACT UP memorabilia. Larry Kramer and Kevin Sessoms are doing book signings there. Larry's giving a speech. So that's the World AIDS Museum in Wilton Manors, Florida.
Now can we talk about Feud?
Yes.
This is about Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, played by Jessica Lange and
Susan Sarandon.
Susan Sarandon as Betty Davis.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing we took very personally.
A lot of it is about whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Well, that is what it's built around, because that's the movie they did, the one movie they did together. But so each of us, we discovered today, was watching separately, and the show comes on, and the opening titles come, and it says, writer, producer, Ryan Murphy is the executive producer, put all this together, but writer, producer, Jaffe Cohen.
The gay comedian that we've had on the show.
Absolutely. Jaffe has been here years ago. We haven't talked to him for a long time, and suddenly there he is in the credits of the show. So I immediately contacted a mutual friend and said, what is with Jaffe's connection to this show? And I was told he wrote this script in 2009, and Ryan Murphy picked it up recently and has turned it into this big Fox series.
Well,
so congratulations, Jaffe.
It's pretty campy.
It's supposed to be.
Well,
that's the point. As opposed to When We Rise, which finally mercifully reached its end last week. Now, a lot of people like this series.
It brought back memories for a lot of people. Some people said they couldn't even watch it, because especially the AIDS stuff, because they were reliving it.
And I had, I told you last week after we'd just seen the first 2-hour episode that it was leaving me cold. A little Stockholm syndrome set in. I got into it some as the week went on. I did think the best part of it was the 1-hour documentary special, because that was real with the real people.
Yeah, they interviewed people. It was sort of redid gay history with the actual people rather than actors.
Yes, it was a docudrama. Yeah. But I like the documentary parts of the series the best, because I like seeing real people. So, I would call it a valiant effort. Clearly, they were trying to hit every point of LGBT history.
A little didactic.
Yeah, extremely didactic. And I thought without poetry, without subtlety, without sophistication or wit. We
don't want to be blasé about getting 8 hours on network television.
The ratings were not great. I hope people learned something from it, but I really think if they had sort of pulled back a little and just done a little bit at a time and gotten a little more personal and a little more subtle about it, that they could have accomplished more. Because I can speak only for myself. Others, as I say, had a very different reaction, and I don't know what the general public thought, but I didn't find myself caring about the characters as much as I wanted to. And I know some of them. Yes.
Well, when you have so many characters, it can become very hard to follow. But of course, then if you don't do enough characters, people say, you left so-and-so out.
Yeah.
You left so-and-so out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of the people that they chose were of course, interesting.
Yeah.
And they chose a lot of the people they chose because they survived.
Yes, and I think all that is fine, and I appreciate the effort, and I appreciate all that sort of politically correct attempt, but I miss the heart and soul.
Yep.
And whatever. You can make your own judgments.
Okay.
I must mention one thing that was extremely offensive, and that was at the beginning, actually, of the 1-hour documentary, where George Chauncey,
the historian,
very well-known and respected historian, sits there and says, no other community has had to fight as many battles for, respect or whatever he said. I couldn't even write down every word. You can find it on demand. I found that so incredibly offensive. Who is he, Ben Carson?
No, I imagine what he was thinking about was all the, in our time, not ever, but I mean in
other community.
All the anti-gay referenda and everything that we had to deal with. Now, of course, in the past, we used to just define black people as 3/5 of a person, and there was something called slavery.
Chains?
Yes.
Native Americans, Muslims, every community has had to fight.
Women?
Jews? Oh my God. No other community. So offensive.
Well, I don't know if Beauty and the Beast can redeem all this, but they apparently... Now, this is, by the way, directed by Bill Condon, who is an openly gay man.
Yes.
The new movie, Beauty and the Beast.
Disney has been gay-friendly. Millions of gay people work at Disney.
Well, they've done two things. They've done that. So they've slipped a gay character. The guy played by Josh Gad on the left there, who was, what's the character's name? I'm not gonna get it, even though I did see it at one time. Anyway, Michael Musto says it's okay.
He's briefly gay at the end of the movie, and this has caused
It's LeFou, who was the sidekick of Gaston, who was the butch, over masculine guy.
So the virulent homophobe in Russia, Vitaly Milanov, and a small Alabama drive-in are both trying to censor this movie.
No, they're saying they wouldn't show it, but it's not like it's been offered to your drive-in.
No, but I actually think we're doing pretty well if that's the entire opposition.
And, wait till the million moms get a hold of it. Disney also aired its first same-sex cartoon kiss on Star versus the Forces of Evil. I watched it. It was brief, but there it was.
It was brief, but yes, there it was. It's a kids' cartoon show. They were showing a concert sequence, and so they were sort of panning around the stadium audience and showing a lot of different couples kissing, including a same-sex couple.
How about that Justin Timberlake?
What a guy.
Our friend Chris Cooper he watched the iHeart Radio Music Awards, which we're not familiar with. But
I know about the iHeart Radio.
Oh, Chris wasn't. But Justin Timberlake won the Song of the Year award and addressed young people saying, if you're black, if you're brown, if you're gay, if you're lesbian, if you're trans, or maybe you're just a sissy singing boy from Tennessee, anyone that's treating you unkindly, it's only because they're afraid. Well, they've been taught to be afraid of how important you are. And he went on, and he used an epithet at the end, which got a big round of applause.
And he said, being different means you make a difference.
That's nice.
Yeah, that was nice.
That's nice.
Yeah. And by the way, he's the sissy singer boy from Tennessee.
Okay.
I talked a little last week about Eric Marcus's podcast series, Making Gay History. He wrote the book Making Gay History years ago.
You're in it.
And your podcast will probably be on.
Oh, maybe
eventually.
My podcast I was interviewed, but too many white guys.
But he taped all the interviews, not planning to do anything with them, but now he has them and he's making them into this podcast series. And so season 2 has just started. And the first episode in season 2 is Randy Wicker and Marsha P. Johnson. And I wasn't sure that he actually had Marsha P. Johnson on tape or was just having Randy talk about her because they were good friends. But I listened to it, and there's Marsha talking about how, contrary to some popular wisdom, she was not the first person to throw a rock at Stonewall. She says she didn't get there till 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's just fantastic to hear people, real people, talk about their experiences. And so many LGBT heroes, stars, regular people.
Our old bosses, Damian Martin and Emery Hetrick.
And they're all available at makinggayhistory.com. And it's just fascinating. And I really congratulate Eric, who's done a terrific job of putting this together. Maybe we'll get him in here at some point to tell us more about this.
Be great.
Yeah. Highly recommended.
I was very sad to read of the passing of Robert Osborne, the host on Turner Classic Movies for so many years. I thought he was a tremendously humane presence on television. I didn't know whether he was gay or not for many years. I used to see him out.
Really?
Well, you never know. I would see him at Joe Allen, and he would usually be with a group of gay men. And apparently had a partner for 20 years, George Staller, a theater director. I have George from.
Oh, you told me David earlier.
All right, George Staller, a theater director and producer. They didn't discuss their relationship with the press, but they often attended events together. And Turner Classic Movies is what gets you through when you're sick and depressed or anything else. There he was.
Just day to day, they have great stuff.
They do.
And his introductions were wonderful and added a lot of depth to the viewing of movies.
And there's this British movie, Departure, which I wasn't aware of. It's out on DVD now. It's centered on Alex Lawther, there with Juliet Stevenson. He played the young Alan Turing in The Imitation Game, but he plays a 15-year-old with a crush on an older boy who his mother takes an interest in. I mean, it's a little weird, but she's now making a cottage industry of playing the mother of gay sons. She was in Food of Love, doing that in 2002. It's not an easy movie, but it is sensitively acted.
Well, if you're looking for movies like that, there's another one out now, Fair Haven, about the struggles of a young gay man who's been subjected to conversion therapy. It's playing in theaters, but it's also available on DVD or video on demand, and maybe even free online. I'm not sure. Fair Haven. And we want to follow up on something we recommended last week, this new exhibit at the Japan Society here in New York, a third gender. Beautiful youths in Japanese prints. Our associate producer Bill Ballman went to a preview this morning there and said it's just magnificent. You see that little bald patch on the head of the middle character there? That is evidently a sign of availability for sex to older
I'll have to keep that
gentlemen
in mind.
or ladies. But the Japan Society, you can get more information on this at japansociety.org/gallery. It's going to be on for through June, middle of June. And there are a lot of lectures and panel discussions and things associated with it. I'm going to try to get over there because I'd like to see it, but I'd like to hear some of the discussions of this. It sounds fascinating.
We have time for a couple of announcements? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, if you're over 50 and living in New York, there's a survey for LGBT New Yorkers called at lgbtsurvey.org. Fill it out. It's about housing for LGBT older people.
And next Wednesday, the 15th, at the LGBT Center at 7 p.m., New Fest, the film festival, is holding one of its monthly screenings, Girl on Girl, a documentary about what a lesbian actually looks like.
Well, it looks like they have us out of time.
Okay.
Dignity's having a memorial service for Reverend Dan McCarthy on March 25th at 11 o'clock at St. John's in the Village.
We will see you here next week. Thank you very much for joining us.
And we didn't even talk about Notre Dame alumni objecting to Mike Pence as the speaker, the LGBT alumni.